taking a look at the Pantera rear caliper before it's disassembled. In truth, this is after I've reassembled it, but just to give an idea, this single bolt and nut holds this bail on. The bail is all that holds the shoes in place. This spring clip, which I assume is an anti-noise feature, pops off with a screwdriver under here where I've got my finger. So pop the spring clip off, take this bolt out, take the bail out, and the two pads will come out. So I'm starting on the opposite side of the car now, the passenger side. So here's the one bolt and nut that hold the bail that holds the pads in. You see what I presume is a noise reducing spring clip that snaps onto the top, and the brake bleeder. Really all there is to see at this juncture. So at this point I've got the pads out, and you can see the slot in the piston that needs to be turned 45 degrees. The pads were stuck in there pretty good. They apparently don't retract very much, and I more or less had to grab the ears with pliers and tap on the pliers with a hammer to get them to move out of here. So at this point I've turned the piston and the caliper 45 degrees using a combination of screwdrivers. The upper screwdriver is just holding the lower screwdriver firmly in the slot. This is just a Craftsman screwdriver with a square shank that I cut the tip off of so I have clearance to the fender. And I took a grinder to sharpen up the corners so it's less likely to come out of the slot in the piston. And the piston turned very easily to the 45 degree position, which is necessary for it to move back. Kind of an interesting caliper. It's got a piston for each pad. So this piston's pressing directly on the pad that's missing where my finger is now. Then there's a piston back here that pushes towards the center of the car, taking this large steel frame with it. So the gap here between the steel frame and the disc gets smaller as the pads wear out. And what I need to do now, the sliding surface is right here between the caliper cylinder and the metal frame. It slides right here. I think this is some kind of an anti-rattle spring arrangement. But I've got to tap this frame here and here to get it to move this way, compressing this piston into the cylinder. Now with the bleeder closed, I can probably watch this piston come out at me, and I'll need to open the bleeder and push this one back after I get this pushed over far enough to get the pad in. So what worked really well is to just take a big screwdriver, get safely towards the center of the disc and right in the center of the, what do you call this, the steel frame or the steel bridge, and just pull back gently with the screwdriver. It moves over very easily. Of course I thought of that last. Problem I'm having now is the friction material seems to be too long, and on this inboard pad there's only so much space in this iron casting for the friction material. There's obviously enough space for the steel backing plate, but I think the friction material is a little too long. It's dragging here. I had it all put back together, and then I got to thinking I don't want that inner shoe to be binding at the top and bottom, so I'm going to pull it out and see if I can reduce the length of the friction material with sandpaper. So I made sure the friction material is shorter than the steel backing. And as much as I could, I tried not to sand anything off of the steel backing. So I sanded a little bit off of the friction material. And actually on the old pads, the friction material is smaller here than the steel. But anyway, I sanded it about even, and anyway, they drop in easily now. Compare that to having to hammer them in. I just slip them in by hand. I can slip them out by hand. So I think I'm going to have to take the first side apart and do the same work on it. So you can see right here, now there's a gap where I reduced the length of the friction material right there and right here, so the pad wouldn't bind in this space. They fit freely now. It's not the thickness of the pad in the wearing direction, it's the length in the circumferential direction, so to speak. So at this point, I'm done with the brake pad replacement. I'll bleed the brakes since I'm in the neighborhood, and that'll be that. Thanks, and be sure to watch my other videos.